The metallic blue paint gleamed under the garage lights as I ran my fingers along the hood of my 1967 Mustang Fastback. 3 years of saving every penny from my part-time job at the auto shop. 3 years of researching, hunting, and finally finding this beauty rusting away in some farmer's barn 2 states over. I'd driven there with my best friend Marcus on a freezing February morning, handed over $8,500 in carefully counted bills, and towed her home with dreams dancing in my head. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. That was 8 months ago. Now, at 19, I was finally ready to start her up for the first time since the restoration began. "Jake, dinner!" Mom's voice echoed from the kitchen, but I pretended not to hear. Just 5 more minutes with my baby. I'd spent every free moment of the past year rebuilding her engine, replacing the transmission, welding patch panels, sanding, priming, painting. The interior was next. I'd already ordered the seat covers and carpet kit. "Jake." This time, it was Dad's voice, carrying that edge that meant business. I sighed, wiped my hands on a rag, and headed inside. The kitchen smelled like Mom's famous pot roast, and any other day that would have lifted my spirits. But tonight, something felt off. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, and Dad was doing that thing where he cleared his throat every few seconds. His nervous tell. My younger sister Chelsea bounced in her chair, practically vibrating with excitement. At 17, she was the golden child who could do no wrong, the one whose smile could melt glaciers and whose tears could move mountains, especially Dad's mountains. "So," Dad began, setting down his fork with deliberate precision, "we need to talk about something as a family." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever started with those words. "Chelsea got accepted to Northwestern," Mom said, her voice artificially bright. "Full academic scholarship, but she still needs money for housing, books, living expenses." I looked at Chelsea, genuinely happy for her despite my growing unease. "That's amazing, Chels. Northwestern's got one of the best journalism programs in the country." Her smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, it's really expensive though. Even with the scholarship." Dad cleared his throat again. "The thing is, Jake, we've been looking at our finances, and we're going to need to make some sacrifices to make this work for Chelsea." "Okay," I said slowly. "What kind of sacrifices?" The silence stretched like taffy. Mom studied her plate. Chelsea's excitement had completely evaporated, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like guilt. "Your car," Dad finally said. "We're going to need to sell your Mustang." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt dizzy for a moment, like the room had tilted sideways. "What?" I whispered. "Now, before you get upset?" "Before I get upset?" I shot to my feet, chair scraping against the hardwood. "Dad, that's my car. I bought it with my money. I've spent a year of my life rebuilding it." "Jake, honey, please sit down," Mom pleaded. "It's not even registered in your name," Dad said quietly. "Since you were 18 when you bought it, we had to put it under our insurance, remember? Technically, it's our car." My vision blurred with rage. "That's a technicality, and you know it. You said it was just for insurance purposes." "This is for your sister's future," Mom said. "Education has to come first. You'll understand when you're older." "When I'm older? I'm 19. And what about my future? What about the money I've already put into it? The hundreds of hours?" Chelsea finally spoke up, her voice small. "Maybe there's another way." "No," Dad cut her off firmly. "This is what needs to happen. Jake, you're young. You'll have other cars." "Other cars?" I laughed bitterly. "Dad, this isn't just any car. This is a '67 Fastback. Do you have any idea how rare these are? How much they're worth when they're restored? Which is exactly why it needs to be sold, Dad said. Marcus's dad is a dealer, right? He said he could get us at least 15,000 for it, maybe 20 if we wait for the right buyer. My heart stopped. They'd already talked to Marcus's dad. This wasn't a discussion, it was a done deal they were informing me about. You already decided this without me? We're telling you now, Dad said defensively. I looked around the table at my family, my parents, who'd always preached about working hard for what you wanted, about the value of saving money, about keeping your promises. My sister, who wouldn't even meet my eyes now. I won't let you do this, I said quietly. Dad's face hardened. Jake, you're still living under our roof. This isn't negotiable. I stared at him for a long moment, then walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and kept walking until I found myself at Marcus's place 3 blocks away. They what? Marcus nearly choked on his Mountain Dew. We were sitting in his basement where I'd just finished explaining the situation. Sold it. Well, they're going to sell it. Your dad's supposed to pick it up tomorrow. Marcus shook his head. Dude, my dad didn't agree to anything. Your parents asked him about values, but he didn't commit to buying it. A small spark of hope flickered in my chest. Really? Yeah. And between you and me? He thinks your parents are making a huge mistake. He saw the work you put into that car. He knows what it means to you. We sat in silence for a while, the unfairness of it all settling over me like a heavy blanket. Then Marcus spoke up. You know what the messed up part is? Your sister's going to Northwestern. That's like, what, $40,000 a year? Even if they get 20 for your car, that's barely going to make a dent. He was right. And that made it worse. This wasn't even about the money. Not really. This was about my parents choosing Chelsea over me. Again. It was about them thinking my dreams, my work, my sacrifices didn't matter. I went home that night to find a sold sign on my Mustang, except it wasn't sold to Marcus's dad. While I'd been out, my parents had called the first buyer they could find, some collector from across town who'd apparently been looking for a project car. He'd paid $12,000 cash and towed it away within 2 hours. $12,000 for a car that would easily be worth 30 when finished, and that had already cost me nearly $15,000 between the purchase price and parts. I stood in the empty garage, staring at the oil stain where she used to sit, and something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about respect, about fairness, about my family treating me like my dreams didn't matter. The next morning at breakfast, Dad slid an envelope across the table to me. What's this? $2,000. Your share. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. My share of what? The car sale. We know you put your own money into it. I put $15,000 into that car, Dad. $15,000. Well, we can't give you all of it. Chelsea needs... I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. Don't you dare mention Chelsea right now. I snatched the envelope and stalked out, but not before I heard Chelsea whisper, This isn't right. Too little. Too late, sis. That afternoon, I withdrew every penny from my savings account, another $3,000 I'd been saving for college, and drove to Northwestern University. It took me 4 hours to get there, 4 hours to plan exactly what I was going to do. The admissions office was busy, filled with excited students and nervous parents. I waited in line, rehearsing my story. When I finally reached the desk, I smiled at the admissions counselor. Hi, I need to speak with someone about my sister's scholarship. Chelsea Morrison? She's supposed to start this fall. The counselor pulled up Chelsea's file. Yes, here she is. Full academic scholarship. What can I help you with? There's been a family emergency, I said, injecting just the right amount of distress into my voice. Our dad lost his job, and we're not going to be able to cover her living expenses anymore. She's devastated, but she wanted me to ask if there's any way to defer her admission for a year while we get back on our feet financially. The counselor's face softened with sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Let me check what our options are. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a deferral form that would postpone Chelsea's admission to the following year. All it needed was Chelsea's signature. But I wasn't done. My next stop was the bank where my parents had their mortgage. I'd been on their account since I was 16. They'd added me so I could make deposits from my job. I'd never abused that privilege. Until now. I need to make a payment toward my parents' mortgage, I told the teller, sliding over a cashier's check for $5,000, every penny I had left. But here's the thing about mortgage payments. If you don't specify where the money goes, it goes toward the principal. And if you make a large principal payment, it changes the loan terms. Specifically, it changes the monthly payment amount due to some complicated banking formula I'd researched extensively. 3 days later, Mom called me at work, hysteria creeping into her voice. Jake, did you do something to our mortgage? What do you mean? The bank called. They said our monthly payment is going down by almost $300 because of some principal payment, but we never made a principal payment. Weird, I said. Maybe you should ask them about it. What I didn't tell her was that I'd also requested detailed payment histories, insurance information, and tax records. All things I was entitled to as an account holder. All things that were now sitting in a manila folder in my car. The next phase of my plan went into effect that weekend. I spent Saturday morning creating a beautiful scrapbook. Photos of me working on the Mustang, before and after shots, receipts for every part I'd bought, documentation of every hour I'd spent. I made copies of everything and put together a presentation that would make a corporate executive weep. Then I invited the whole extended family over for Sunday dinner. Grandma Morrison, Grandpa Joe, Aunt Sarah, Uncle Bob, cousins Katie and Mike. Everyone who'd been asking about my project car for months. Everyone who knew how much work I'd put into it. I waited until dessert to make my move. So, I said casually, setting down my fork, I wanted to thank everyone for all the support you've given me with the Mustang over the past year. Dad's face went white. Mom started coughing on her pie. Unfortunately, I continued, I won't be able to show it off like I planned. Mom and Dad decided to sell it to pay for Chelsea's college expenses. The silence was deafening. Grandma Morrison's eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. They sold your car? Aunt Sarah asked, incredulous. The one you've been working on all year? Uncle Bob added. I nodded sadly. It's okay though. Family comes first, right? Even if I did pay for it myself and spend every weekend for 8 months rebuilding it. I pulled out my scrapbook and started passing around photos. The family flipped through page after page of documentation, their faces growing darker with each image. Jake put $15,000 of his own money into this car, Grandma Morrison said slowly, fixing my parents with a stare that could melt steel. And they sold it for $12,000, I added helpfully. Giving him only $2,000 of that, I continued. The interrogation that followed was brutal. My parents tried to explain, tried to justify their decision, but every word just dug them deeper. By the time dessert was over, it was clear that public opinion had turned decisively against them, but I still wasn't finished. Monday morning, I showed up at Chelsea's school during her lunch period. Jake? What are you doing here? I handed her the deferral form. I thought you might want to see this. She read it, confusion clear on her face. What is this? It's a deferral form for Northwestern. I picked it up for you. Why would I need to defer? I sat down across from her in the crowded cafeteria. Chelsea, do you want to know what that car was really worth? She shrugged uncomfortably. Dad said $12,000. That's what he sold it for. But do you know what it would have been worth when I finished restoring it? She shook her head. I pulled out my phone and showed her completed auction results for similar cars. $35,000 to $40,000 for a numbers matching 67 fastback in perfect condition. Her eyes widened. I put $15,000 of my own money into that car, Chels. Every penny I made working at the shop for 3 years. And you know what I was planning to do when I finished it? What? I was going to sell it to pay for my own college tuition. The color drained from her face. So here's the deal, I continued, my voice perfectly calm. You can either sign this deferral form and wait a year for college while you get a job and pay me back the $13,000 difference between what that car was worth and what I got for it. I let the sentence hang in the air. Or, she whispered, or you can go to Northwestern this fall and I'll spend the next 4 years making sure everyone knows that your entire college education was paid for by stealing and selling your brother's dream. Chelsea stared at me for a long moment. Jake, I didn't know. I thought it was just some old car. It wasn't just some old car, Chelsea. It was my future. And Mom and Dad gave it to you without asking me, without considering what it meant to me, without even giving me a fair share of what they got for it. She looked down at the deferral form. What happens if I sign this? You take a gap year. You get a job. You pay me back $13,000. I'll even let you do it in installments. And then you go to college with a clear conscience. And if I don't? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then I make your life very, very complicated. Starting with a call to Northwestern's financial aid office about some irregularities in your family's financial situation. It was a bluff, mostly, but Chelsea didn't know that. She signed the form. The explosion at home that night was epic. Dad screamed about manipulation and blackmail. Mom cried about family loyalty. Chelsea tried to explain that she was doing the right thing, but they wouldn't listen. You're tearing this family apart, Dad shouted at me. No, I replied calmly. You already did that when you decided my dreams didn't matter. But the real fireworks came the next day, when Chelsea showed up at Northwestern with her signed deferral form. The phone started ringing at 6 a.m. What did you do? Dad's voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I helped Chelsea make an ethical decision. You manipulated her. I gave her information and options. What she did with them was her choice. Northwestern is calling asking about our financial hardship. They want documentation. Weird. I wonder why they'd want that. The truth was, when Chelsea submitted her deferral form citing financial hardship, it triggered an automatic review. The university wanted to help. They offered to increase her aid package, provide work-study opportunities, even connect her with emergency hardship grants, all of which required detailed financial documentation. Documentation that would show my parents had just sold a valuable asset and still had steady income from both their jobs. If they find out we lied about financial hardship, they could revoke her scholarship entirely. Mom was crying now. Then maybe you shouldn't have taught me that lying and manipulation are acceptable when it's for family, I said coolly. The next few days were a masterclass in escalation. My parents tried everything: guilt, anger, threats, bribes. They offered to give me the full $12,000 from the car sale. Then they offered to help me find another project car. It's not about the money anymore, I told them. It's about respect. We do respect you. No, you don't. You sold my car without asking me. You gave me a fraction of what it was worth. You prioritized Chelsea's wants over my needs without even discussing alternatives. And when I got upset about it, you told me I was being immature. Dad tried one more approach. Jake, if we can't fix this Northwestern situation, Chelsea might lose her scholarship entirely. Is that what you want? What I want, I said slowly, is for Chelsea to get a job, save her money, and pay me back what I'm owed. What I want is for you to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. What I want is for our family to function on principles of fairness and mutual respect. And if we can't give you that, I shrugged. Then I guess you'll have to explain to Grandma Morrison why Chelsea isn't going to college next year. The breakthrough came on Thursday. I was at work, elbow deep in an engine rebuild, when Marcus came running into the shop. Dude, you need to come outside, now. In the parking lot sat my Mustang. Not just my Mustang, my completely restored, perfectly painted, interior finished Mustang. It looked better than I'd ever dared dream. Behind it stood the collector who'd bought it. A man in his 60s with grease under his fingernails and a sheepish expression. You, Jake Morrison? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Your sister hired me to finish your car. Paid me in advance for all the work, plus my time. She also wants to sell it back to you for exactly what I paid your parents for it. I don't understand. He smiled. Your sister got a job at 3 different places. She's working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Kid's determined to make this right. I found Chelsea that evening at the Maui diner where she was working her second shift of the day. She looked exhausted, her Northwestern hoodie stained with coffee and ketchup. Chels? She looked up, startled. Jake. Hi. Can we talk? She glanced around the busy diner. I've got another hour on my shift. I'll wait. When she finally clocked out, we sat in my truck in the parking lot. She looked fragile in the dim light, younger than her 17 years. Why? I asked. She was quiet for a long time. Because you were right. About all of it. That car wasn't just some old car. It was your dream. And Mom and Dad. They just took it away from you like it didn't matter. So you deferred Northwestern. I was going to defer anyway, she admitted. I got scared, you know? About leaving home, about college, about everything. The deferral was actually a relief. I stared at her. Then why didn't you just say that? Because it would have disappointed them. And I wanted them to see what they did to you. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, Jake. I should have stood up for you from the beginning. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. You don't have to work 3 jobs to pay me back, I said finally. Yeah, I do. I calculated it all out. If I keep this schedule until next summer, I can pay you the full $13,000 and still have money saved for Northwestern. Chelsea? No, she said firmly. This is something I need to do. For me as much as for you. I looked at my little sister, exhausted, determined, finally growing into the person I'd always known she could be. Okay, I said, but I'm buying you dinner. You look like you haven't eaten in days. 3 months later, Chelsea handed me a check for $13,000. She was $2,000 ahead of schedule, having picked up extra shifts and received tips that would make a bartender jealous. I can't believe you actually did it, I said, staring at the check. I can't believe it either, she admitted. But it feels good, you know? Earning something myself. My Mustang was parked in our driveway, fully restored and more beautiful than I'd ever imagined it could be. But the best part wasn't the car. The best part was watching my parents try to rebuild their relationship with both of us. It took time, lots of conversations, some arguments, and more than a few tears. But eventually, Dad admitted that selling my car was wrong. Mom acknowledged that they'd treated me unfairly. And slowly, carefully, we started functioning as a family again. Chelsea started Northwestern the following fall, but she was different now. More confident, more independent, more aware of the value of things. She'd earned her place there in ways that had nothing to do with academics and everything to do with character. As for me, I kept the Mustang for 2 more years, driving it on weekends and showing it at local car shows. Then, when I was ready to start my own business, I sold it to a collector in California for $38,000. I used that money to open Morrison's Custom Auto, specializing in classic car restoration. Chelsea was my first investor. She put up $5,000 of her own savings for a 10% stake in the business. Why? I asked her when she handed me the check. She grinned. Because I believe in my big brother. And because I learned that sometimes the best investments are the ones you make in family. The shop is doing well now. We've got more work than we can handle, and I'm hiring my second full-time mechanic next month. Chelsea stops by whenever she's home from college, usually bringing her friends to see the cool car shop her brother owns. My parents visit too sometimes. Dad likes to tell customers about how I built the business from scratch, conveniently leaving out the part about the Mustang. But that's okay. We all have our version of the story. The truth is, losing that car taught me something valuable. Sometimes the things that matter most aren't the things themselves, but what we're willing to do to protect them. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's poor choices define your future. But the most important lesson came from watching Chelsea work 3 jobs to make things right. She didn't have to do that. She could have taken the easy road, let our parents' money pay for her mistakes, and moved on with her life. Instead, she chose to do something harder. She chose to earn her redemption. That choice changed everything. Not just between us, but within our whole family. It showed my parents what real accountability looks like. It showed me that my little sister had more character than any of us had given her credit for. And it showed all of us that sometimes, the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't money, or opportunities, or even forgiveness. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can give someone is the chance to make things right. These days, when people ask me about the Mustang, I tell them it was the best car I ever owned, not because of the engine or the paint job or even the money I made when I sold it. It was the best car I ever owned, because losing it taught me who I really was, and getting it back taught me who my family could be. And that, I've learned, is worth more than any car ever built.